The playoff run comes to an end in South Florida as the Nittany Lions lose a heartbreaker to Notre Dame.
You know, we're hurting. Obviously, that's not how we want to go out.
Drew Aller's late interception leads to the winning field goal for the Irish. His teammates have a message for their QB after it's over.
Big plays happens, heartbreaks happens, you got your ups, your downs, and this is just one of those downs for us. And I thank you, Drew, for all that he's done, because without him, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
And he's been an inspiration for his college friends all year long. How this 10-year-old has made an impact with the team. It's time for Nittany Game Week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nittany Game Week. I'm Todd Sadowski in South Florida, where the Nittany Lions suffer a crushing defeat at the hands of Notre Dame, 27-24 in the Orange Bowl. A late second field goal puts an end to an amazing season for Penn State. Drew Aller and the Nittany Lions ready to square off with the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, a berth in the national championship on the line at Hard Rock Stadium. Penn State scores 3 touchdowns in this game. Governor Mifflin grad Nick Singleton takes the ball across the goal line on all 3. In the final minutes, tied at 24, Aller with a chance to drive the team to the winning score, inexplicably throws it where only a Fighting Irish defender can catch it, and he does. Aller in disbelief and then in agony as he watches Notre Dame kicker Mitch Jeter boot the game-winning kick with less than 15 seconds on the clock. Aller's teammates make sure to let him know he's not the reason they lost the game. The Nittany Lions in shock as their 13-win season comes to a sudden halt in South Florida.
Notre Dame is a great team. Coach Franklin did his best to prepare us for this game. We just didn't execute on a couple plays, and then, it's a small margin of error at this level.
You know, we're hurting. Obviously, that's not how we want to go out. Proud of the way we fought. Proud of the way we fought all year, really.
Now joining me are former Nittany Lions assistant coaches Jay Paterno and Tom Bradley. And guys, this is one of those it's a shame someone has to lose type of results. What stands out to you about the Nittany Lions setback to the Fighting Irish?
Well, you always say these games come down to 2 or 3 plays or 3 or 4 plays. And really, there were a couple in the first half. The missed opportunity to Singleton for the touchdown. Abdul Carter not quite getting the fumble before the half, because this could have been a 17-0, 21-0 game at half, and it probably would have been over. But you got to look at the way Penn State played the whole game, even when the momentum seemed to go to Notre Dame. They hung in there, got back in the game, and it's unfortunate it came down to it. But to put this on one play at the end of the game, I think is unfair. And it's another one of those things where you look at it and say these games come down to 3 or 4, and you never know when they're going to happen. And Notre Dame got them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Jay, you made, because Penn State jumped out to the 10-0 lead. You're thinking, okay, here we go. Then it turns around, then it's 17-10. I think the disappointing thing was the big plays they gave up on defense, the big pass plays. And, if you minimize those big plays, you usually end up winning the game.
Thanks, guys. We'll hear more from Jay and Tom throughout the show. And Penn State prides itself in being a family. And one of its greatest inspirations this year comes from a 10-year-old York County boy. Ryan Yee introduces us to Gannon Kupko, who for the guys in the blue and white was one of their most valuable teammates.
Family on to me.
1, 2, 3.
The newest member of the Penn State Nittany Lions family might just be their biggest addition this season.
I'm their lucky charm.
10-year-old Gannon Kupko has been a member of the Penn State football team since the beginning of the year.
We got a new member of the team, new guy joining the family, and that's Gannon.
Since then, win after win, with the program's first ever college football playoff semifinal appearance on the horizon, Gannon is geared up, bow tie and all, to support the blue and white.
Woo! Very excited! Let's go, Penn State! Woo!
Gannon, who faces immune dysfunctions that requires chemotherapy twice a day, was matched with the Penn State football team through Team Impact, an organization that pairs children facing serious illness and disability with college sports teams.
Hey, Gannon, how you doing?
It's an opportunity Gannon, his dad Gannon Sr., and his mom Jennifer never dreamed that they would ever have.
He always wanted to be a football player. He would dress up in his little helmets and, get down on the floor like he was the offensive line. It was funny. To tell him, no, you can't play, it was kind of heartbreaking, but when Team Impact said, no, he can play, he can be a part of the team, and it was a surreal moment because he's like, it clicked like, oh, I am a football player, I can play.
With the team including him as one of their own, relationships flourished, including the one between Gannon and his favorite player, offensive lineman Cooper Cousins, a relationship between biggest role model and his biggest motivator.
The tackle Cooper made and seeing them win, and win.
You see like little Gannon and you see this 6'6" player, like their bond is like, they are truly best friends. I mean, that is the first person that Gannon seeks out. He's like, whether on the field or when we're walking up to see them practice or meet them one-on-one, that is the first player he has his eyes set on.
It's a buy-in from Cousins and the rest of the Penn State football team put together by Team Impact that truly reflects a win-win for everyone involved.
What's up, big dog? You good? You enjoy the game? Okay, that's up. It's encouraging to me with everything that goes on in the world that you can look around and see people like the players on the Penn State football team who are stepping up, who are going above and beyond to help kids and use their platforms to make a difference. And the cool thing is that when we get feedback back, almost always the student athletes say we got more out of this than the families did. And the families would say they got an awful lot out of it as well. So it's a pretty cool win-win.
A win that's already the team's biggest of the year, regardless of Thursday's result.
Win or lose, it has been a remarkable journey, and it's not over yet. I mean, it definitely is not. The impact that Team Impact does with the families and the football team, that lasts forever.
We are Penn State!
Thanks, Ryan. Great story. Coming up, our roadmap to victory. Coach Paterno gives us a detailed look at what worked for the Nittany Lions this year and how they can utilize these strengths heading into next season. More Nittany Game Week after this.
Roadmap to Victory is sponsored by the R&R family of companies.
Welcome back to Nittany Game Week. I'm Todd Sadowski at Hard Rock Stadium. 13 wins during an unforgettable season. Coach Paterno is here now with our roadmap to victory to detail some of the great things PSU did this season that they can utilize moving forward.
Well, tough way to end the season with the loss in the Orange Bowl. But you know what? At the end of the day, you got to look at this thing and talk about what a great season the whole year was. So when you have a great season like Penn State had this year, there are a number of plays that you may not remember 5 years from now or even 5 weeks from now that we're going to look at that set up a great season like we had. So let's start with the USC game, which that was a big win at the time on the road in overtime. And what do you remember about that game? You probably remember Tyler Warren, his 17 catches, 224 yards, and 1 touchdown. What you may not remember is the guy who came up with the big plays, Julian Fleming. And let's talk about those 2 catches. He had 2 catches the whole game, both of them on 4th downs, both of them on the touchdown drive to tie the game that were critical. If he doesn't make those plays, Penn State doesn't win. Now here, obviously Warren had a lot of catches. The safety off the screen comes in and doubles along with that linebacker. So that takes that away. They take the slot away, and now Fleming has to make the play. And when you look at this, Allor goes back to pass. He's clearly looking Warren's way, and then he comes back on a 4th and 7, 4th and ball game. Fleming makes the play. Now, later in the game, same situation. Another 4th and long, this time 4th and 10. Ball game on the line. Again, same thing. They're taking Warren down the middle. They cover him. They get another guy covering the slot. And now, as Allor scrambles, who does he find again? Once again, Julian Fleming. 2 catches the whole day. You just saw both of them, and if he doesn't make either one of them, they lose the game. Now, let's talk about another road win. Penn State at Wisconsin. It was a 28-13 final, but let's talk about, you go deeper in that game. In the first half, Penn State struggled. Only 7 points, 1 of 5 on 3rd downs, 0 of 1 on 4th downs. And Allor on 3rd down was only 2 of 5 for 18 yards, only made 1 first down in those situations. Second half, Bragula comes in the game, 21 points, 7 via a pick 6, 230 yards of offense, 7 of 9 on 3rd downs. and it really changed the game. Now let's talk about how that happened. Let's talk about the pick six first. Penn State is showing blitz. It's 3rd and long for Wisconsin. The inside push, they don't blitz. The inside push gets in the quarterback's face, and now he's forced to throw the ball to this guy, run down the slot, and you have robber coverage where the safety who's hanging underneath gets under that play, makes the play, and returns it for a touchdown, gets Penn State on top. Now, later in the game, again, you talk about unsung heroes. Here you have Singleton, who's a great receiver. They like to get him in the flat inside the 10. They're trying to get Warren to come backside, and he gets caught in the traffic, so they got those both covered. So now Pagula has to hang in there, and he finds number 16, Khalil Dinkins, who is not one of the major threats in this pass game, but at the right time, in the right place, makes the play he has to. You may not remember that years from now, but that was a critical play in the season. And then finally, when you talk about putting the game away, Penn State's now up 8. They run a direct snap to the running back. Pagula carries out his fake, which gets these linebackers to hesitate. It creates the blocking angles on the edge, and this puts the game away for good at Wisconsin. And it's never an easy place to go and win. They took Oregon to the wire. They really gave Penn State a game. But those couple plays were the difference in the game. Now, one other game you got to think about. Minnesota, a 1-point escape for Penn State. Here's a critical point in the game. Penn State is up 1. Minnesota is driving and having success moving the ball. And there's a fumble that goes on the ground. The quarterback fumbles it. So they create that fumble. The ball then is on the ground. As 2 or 3 people are getting, he bats it away. And then you're going to see great hustle from the safety coming out of the secondary to get this fumble recovery, which then led to a Penn State field goal that put them up with a chance to win the game. Later in the game, 26-22, Minnesota again is driving the ball. They've hit a couple of passes. They've done some great things. Here, this quarterback zips the ball into this passing lane. Here's the window. The safety actually gets caught a step or 2 out of position, but great hustle at the end of the play keeps this guy out of the end zone and keeps Minnesota from taking the lead. And those are just little things, just that little swat right there. And that's the difference between having the kind of season Penn State had and what they could have been had they lost any one of these 3 games. And that is your roadmap, not only to victory, but to a great season, Todd.
Thanks, Coach. Of course, this is a tough one for the fan base as well. They show up and ride the roller coaster in the national semifinal. They were here in South Florida ready to root for their favorite team. A big group of blue and white fans gather at the Alumni Association tailgate to get ready to root on PSU. A smaller gathering was close by, a Penn State family brought together by the Orange Bowl.
It's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, watching them go all across the nation and then finally coming down to where I live now, and it's, a huge opportunity, so wanted to bring the whole family down.
It didn't take much coaxing to convince the Rents to visit in South Florida, and you got to start them young. Little Rylan will be cheering on the blue and white for a long, long time. Still to come, he's not the kind of interview to keep to just one segment. We'll have more with legendary broadcaster Bob Costas in our Impact interview when we return.
Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small-town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
Welcome back to Nittany Game Week. As you can imagine, his presence had a huge impact on last week's episode. We're going for part 2 with one of the best in the business ever. It's broadcasting legend Bob Costas. You've been a proponent of his player safety, and Penn State's 13-2 and looking at the potential of 2 more games. The player safety part of it, are they doing enough to counterbalance this expansion and extension of the season?
Well, and there's also this question. Even for the most dedicated student athlete, which sometimes is a lie and a sham, but does still exist, I'd like to think, even the most dedicated student athlete can't devote all the time that's necessary to even be a passable student with all the travel and the concentration on the games and the practices and all the time that takes. But maybe that ship has completely sailed. The idea that we're going to actually have some sort of balance with integrity between academics and athletics. So there's that. But when it comes to football, the way it's played at the highest levels, and even including in high school, where the contact can be the same or close to the same, you can only make football less dangerous. You cannot make it completely safe. And I think that that message has been absorbed by the NFL and by other levels of football, where there's a better understanding of what concussion protocols should be, what return to play should be, what kind of medical personnel you need to have on the sidelines, that sort of thing. But you can never make the game completely safe.
So in your career, you've covered some of the greatest athletes in the history of sport in this country, many of them household names. Are there other athletes you've covered that maybe weren't household names that like stick out in your mind?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, you make friendships along the way. Many of mine in baseball, some in basketball. The nature of what I did for the most part with the NFL was studio hosting. And it didn't do much college football, although the college football I was involved in, the game in 1987 that we talked about, January 2nd, 1987 at the Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl game in early January of 1995 between Miami and Nebraska, which settled the national championship despite protests from Penn State rooters, and Florida State against Notre Dame in, I guess, 1993, which might be the highest rated regular season college football game ever, even to this point. But I didn't have as many close friendships around football as I did in basketball and in baseball. And what you find sometimes is that your best sources are not the people that are at the center. It's assistant coaches. It's coaches in baseball, the first base, the third base coach. It's the scout. Sometimes those people have more time for you, and they're less guarded in what they tell you because they know that it's not going to be quoted everywhere and you don't see them in a press conference setting. So sometimes the people who are not the bold-faced names become your best sources, and in some cases, your friends.
Bob, two of your children have grown up to win Emmys. I know I get a chance to talk to college students and to young people that are interested in the broadcasting world. What was your advice to them as they got started, and what advice would you give to students today?
Well, it's a Wikipedia misnomer about my daughter. My daughter has spent her life in education. She went to Boston College. She was Phi Beta Kappa there. Then she got a master's at Columbia. She's now going for a second master's in education. She taught public school in New York for 10 years. Now she may be transitioning into some sort of administrative role. We'll see when she finishes this second master's. Her brother has had a career in broadcasting, which I'll get to in a second. But my daughter, Taylor, just said, I want to do one thing directly connected to Dad. And so we arranged for her to be part of the 2012 London Olympics. She worked on the news desk. There's always a news desk at an Olympics in case something outside sports, outside the Olympics happens. And so she had that experience for, 6 weeks or whatever it was in the summer of 2012 in London. And what happens when a big production wins an Emmy, usually the network spends whatever it costs to have all the Emmys minted and gives one to everybody. So therefore, Taylor has her one Emmy. But Keith was always immersed in sports from the time he was a little kid. From the time he was 5 or 6 years old, I was taking him to the NBA Finals and to big football games and to the World Series and whatnot. He was almost a fixture around those events to where the players and coaches and managers knew his name. And he absorbed a lot of that stuff. And right out of college, he got a job at the Major League Baseball Network. Obviously, I helped him get that job, but this is the way it went. I said to the people there, give him whatever an entry-level job is. And after I've opened that door for him, he sinks or swims on his own merit. And that's exactly what he's done.
Always time well spent listening to Bob Costas. We need to step aside from the TV show for a quick break, but make sure you go to NittanyGameWeek.com. You have got to hear the entire conversation with one of the best ever, Bob Costas, along with our other web-exclusive content like our depth chart and Nittany Game Week podcast. Still have some hardware to hand out. Coach Bradley identifies one of the key contributors at the Orange Bowl and delivers his scrap metal when we return. We're heading into the final minutes on Nittany Game Week.
The Nittany Game Week Depth Chart is brought to you by Burke and Bradley Orthopedics. Located in Pittsburgh, Burke and Bradley Orthopedics is a comprehensive sports medicine practice, providing patients with the most current and innovative approaches in diagnosis and treatment. Scrap Metal is sponsored by the We Are In, voted #1 game day restaurant in Center County. Follow us on Facebook and visit thewearein.com or call for dinner or room reservations.
Okay, Tom, let's have it. Who wins the scrap metal after the Orange Bowl?
Well, you know, I always hate it when I have to give it to an offensive guy. I'd rather give it to a defensive guy. But this week, no doubt, Nick Singleton, the running back from Governor Mifflin High School. Nick had 15 carries for 84 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, it's trivia time again, and last week's question, Penn State had a 4-1 record in the Orange Bowl. What years did Penn State win the Orange Bowl and finish undefeated? The answers, 1968, 1969, and 1973. This week's question, prior to this season, how many bowl games had Penn State played after January 1st?
In addition to a television show, we're bringing Nittany Lions together with our depth chart at NittanyGameWeek.com. We're connecting businesses that support the show with our viewers. Our goal is to build a team that keeps our hometowns strong. It's getting deep in the season. If you want to revisit or review anything that's happened so far, there's a place we encourage you to visit. Make sure to check out NittanyGameWeek.com for previous episodes and all of our web-exclusive content. As always, make sure to submit your picks on our website and show us your Penn State pride. For Jay and Tom, I'm Todd. Thanks so much for watching Nittany Game Week. We'll see you next time.